She labeled me toxic at Christmas, severing my son's relationship. Unbeknownst to her, I'd set a legal snare to ruin her. The Christmas I'm about to tell you about wasn't filled with joy or carols. It was the night my own son, manipulated by his wife, called me toxic and kicked me out of his family. What they didn't know was that I had spent the last 6 months meticulously setting a legal trap, waiting for this exact moment to turn their world upside down. It was 8:40 on Christmas evening. The tree lights flickered softly. Frank Sinatra's voice filled the air, and a half-carved 25-pound organic turkey, which I'd brought from the fancy butcher, sat on the table. My son, David, tapped his wine glass with a fork. My heart hammered, but I remained outwardly calm. "Dad," he said, "I need to share something with you. As of Christmas Day, you are no longer a member of this family." My daughter-in-law, Sarah, 32, blonde, impeccably put together, always gave me a smile. A real smile. The kind you give when you've just unwrapped the perfect gift you've been dreaming of. My grandchildren, Lily and Ethan, 7 and 5, just stared at their plates, probably wishing they could disappear into the mashed potatoes. David, my only child, 35 years old and wearing the cashmere sweater I'd bought him for his birthday, continued, "This has been the subject of our discussions for months now. You have a negative influence on us. You are dominating our family dynamic. It's time for you to depart and allow us some room." Toxic. Domineering. I sat perfectly still, hands folded in my lap, face expressionless. It was the same mask I'd worn through 18 months of chemotherapy with my late wife, Rachel. The same one I'd worn delivering her eulogy 7 years ago, because David had been too grief-stricken to speak. What caused this to happen? I murmured, my voice barely a whisper. Sarah bent at the waist, leaning in. "The reason for this is that you are preventing us from getting enough air. For a number of years, you have been in this position. It is imperative that we establish boundaries that are conducive to good health." "I come by to see you bi-monthly," I countered. "I make phone calls on Sundays. Would that be considered asphyxiation?" "The matter is not related to frequency," she said, her voice adopting that irritating pseudotherapist tone she used whenever she wanted to sound rational. "It has to do with energy. I find your presence to be really exhausting. Is that correct, David?" David nodded. A mechanical, puppet-like nod. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The son for whom I'd paid $50,000 for his undergraduate degree at UCSD. A loan he paid off in full because I had been the co-signer. The son for whom I'd co-signed the mortgage on their 4-bedroom Santa Monica home near good schools, after the banks laughed him out of the building due to his 580 credit score. The son for whom I'd given $85,000 to get his consulting business off the ground when every bank and investor had turned him down. Sarah pressed on, "But of course, you are hovering in something poisonous." She was more comfortable now, empowered. "You form opinions on all matters, big or small. The way in which we instill our values in our children, the manner in which we allocate our funds, and the manner in which we operate our companies. It is a drain on one's energy." "You requested recommendations, so I gave them," I said quietly. "It was something that we did not request," she retorted. "You provided them to others on a continual basis." I looked at David, really looked at him, searching for the little boy who had sobbed on my shoulder after his mother's death. The kid who'd stayed up late to help me go through Rachel's belongings because he knew I couldn't do it alone. The young man who had promised me at her burial, "I don't know how to do life without Mom. Promise me you'll always be there for me." I had given him my word. He still wouldn't meet my gaze. This concept really came from Sarah, correct? I asked. David stiffened. "It's up to us to decide," he said, a hollow assertion. "Don't even try to pretend that you care." Sarah snapped, her rational facade crumbling. "You have had your claws in him for long enough, James. It is the right decision. He needs to be his own man." A parasite. That's what they were calling me. Not the father who had raised him alone after Rachel's death. working double shifts at the engineering firm to pay for travel soccer, debate club, and college applications. A parasite. Lily's eyes welled up. Quiet, subdued sobs. Ethan put his arm around her. Would it be possible for us to go to our room? Lily whispered. No. Sarah said brusquely. No, it hasn't happened yet. This is a moment that is shared amongst members of the family. You have to come to a comprehension of the situation at hand. A precious family memory. Good grief. I should have been taken aback. A surprise attack. But I wasn't unprepared. I had known for years this was coming. Sarah entered David's life 8 years ago. At first, she was kind, grateful when I paid their rent during a tough month, grateful when I paid for their modest $35,000 wedding that somehow required a 4-tier cake and a live band. But after Lily was born, something shifted. Suddenly, my visits weren't anticipated. My gifts overwhelmed them. Being around me was a source of stress. She started dropping hints. David's father, Little Diggs, is extremely engaged. We are attempting to provide the children with some distance from external influences. It is important for David to stop relying on his father and to develop the ability to make decisions on his own. I dismissed it then, blaming new parent stress. I told myself she was just being protective, that it would pass. It didn't. Things deteriorated. 2 years ago, I offered to help them hire a bookkeeper for their business. They were drowning in paperwork, failing to submit quarterly taxes, racking up penalties. Sarah was having a meltdown. They accused me of believing them incapable of trying to control their business, of treating David like a child. I apologized, stepped aside, and let them handle it. They nearly went bankrupt. The IRS filed a lien, freezing their business account. At 3 a.m., David called me, weeping, begging for help. I paid the $45,000 in owed taxes. Sarah offered no thanks, only stating they would have figured it out on their own in due time. The previous year, I'd missed Lily's birthday due to a 101-degree flu. Sarah, in my presence, called David while I was at their house dropping off a gift for Lily. See, he is not even able to put his own granddaughter's interests first. He would rather remain at home and not celebrate her birthday. David knew I had a fever. He remained silent. It was then I began to comprehend. Sarah didn't just dislike me. She wanted me gone. Systematically, she was turning my son against me. 6 months before this Christmas dinner, I was at their house to fix a leaky pipe in the kitchen. David had asked for help, saying they couldn't afford a plumber. Sarah was in the next room, on the phone. I wasn't trying to listen, but the walls were thin. She said, "Everything will eventually come to us anyway once the elderly gentleman was out of the picture." She spoke so informally, so matter-of-factly. The mansion in Beverly Hills, the investment accounts. It is best to expedite the process at this point. The tension will, you know, be the cause of my death. Or, the stress might be my demise, she'd implied. I heard the speakerphone. It was her sister. That appears to be unfeeling, her sister said. His age is 72. In any case, it's not as if he has decades left to live. To be very honest, David is not happy at all. His father continues to act as if he is 12 years old. We would all benefit from this. Standing there in their kitchen, wrench in hand, water dripping from the pipe, I felt a fury I had never known for my son's wife. Unadulterated, icy and crystal clear. I fixed the pipe and left without a word. I sat in my car for an hour before driving home to the paid-off mansion in Beverly Hills that Rachel and I had bought in 1985. I called my attorney. Michael Green had been my attorney for 23 years. He'd handled Rachel's estate, my retirement planning, and numerous corporate contracts. When he answered, I said, "Michael, I need your assistance with something difficult." "James, what is happening at the moment?" "My daughter-in-law is attempting to take my life." "I beg your pardon." "Not at this point in time, not in a literal sense. That is however she desires my death, or at the very least my absence. And I must make preparations for what is to come." We met the next day. I told him everything. The manipulation, the overheard conversation, my worry that Sarah was poisoning my relationship with my son and grandchildren, the progressive alienation. She is putting herself in a position to become the recipient of all the things that I mentioned. She has managed to convince David that I am the root of the problem, that I am overbearing and poisonous, and that I am getting in the way for quite some time. Michael had remained silent. "What is it that you wish to do?" he asked. "I want to protect myself, both legally and financially. I want to ensure that I am not left in a position of vulnerability in the event that she decides to force me out, which I believe she will do. David is a person who has reached the age of majority. I'm not going to allow him to make such decisions with my resources, even though he is the one making them." Michael grabbed a legal pad and started jotting notes. "Tell me about the residence they currently reside in." That's where we began separating the strands of the web. The Santa Monica house. I had provided a $70,000 down payment because David and Sarah had no savings and poor credit. The down payment had been organized through a family trust, one formed in 2015. The mortgage itself was in their names, but the trust under my management had specific provisions allowing for reclamation of assets if the beneficiary violated certain terms. "Which terms are you referring to?" I asked Michael. He'd painstakingly written them in great detail. Keeping up family bonds, participating in family dynamics in good faith, refraining from committing elder abuse or financial exploitation. Sarah knew nothing of these clauses. David had signed the trust agreements without reading them. I had told him it was standard procedure for estate planning and tax optimization. He had trusted me. "The loan for a business," Michael then said. "Tell me about that." 4 years ago, I gave David $85,000 to start his consulting company. He referred to it as a gift. In my documents, I referred to it as a loan. Not as a result of any plans I ever made together. I had preserved the documentation and had intended to pardon it when he had become more established. The promissory note was signed by David. The stipulations included a clause stating that in the event that he did not fulfill any of the payments owing to his business creditors, the note would become instantly payable. David had failed to make payments on his small business loan when the IRS froze their accounts last year. Technically, I could have called in the total $85,000 plus interest. I hadn't. I'd exercised my patience. Michael perused my records. The savings gifts. You have provided them more than $130,000 throughout the course of the past 7 years. Jesus, James, they are in need of assistance. Assistance, yes. This system is responsible for sustaining life. He looked up at me. Did you happen to take any pictures or otherwise record any of this? Everything without exception. Each check, each bank transfer, and each Venmo transaction. I have retained all of the items. A small smile escaped Michael. Not a pleasant smile. In that case, there are other possibilities available to us. I was unwilling to bring my son to court. The case we constructed over the next 6 months would never be heard in a courtroom. I wanted him to understand what he was sacrificing. We revised the trust documents, ensuring every asset, every loan, every gift was fully documented and legally recoverable. We moved the ownership of my house into a separate trust, one David was not a beneficiary of. To completely exclude David and Sarah, we amended my will, redirecting all assets to a non-profit organization bearing Rachel's name. And we prepared an envelope, a large manila envelope containing 6 months' worth of legal work. Copies of trust contracts, loan agreements, payment records, formal notices of default, demand letters for repayment, revised estate plans, and everything else. When is the timing right for you to accomplish this? Michael asked at our last meeting. I will be aware of the situation as soon as they decide to take action, I told him. And if they don't? They certainly will. Sarah will continue to pursue her goals until she has achieved them. She believes that I am vulnerable and that I will allow them to take advantage of me, since I love my son so much that I won't be able to fight back. And will you be willing to do so? I adore my son more than anything in the world, but I also love myself enough to avoid being devastated. As Sarah described my toxicity at that Christmas dinner, I reached into my jacket pocket. My voice was composed. I understand the situation. I will honor your choice if that is what you ultimately decide to do. Sarah narrowed her gaze. She'd expected a fight. Tears, wrath, frantic pleas. My calmness unsettled her. Carefully, she said, "That's good. We appreciate your maturity in this situation. You are grown-ups. It goes without saying. You are now able to make decisions as an adult." "Here is the leaving gift that I have brought with me," I said. I extracted the envelope. It was thick, weighty, official-looking. I placed it on the table. Sarah snatched it in a sudden motion before David could react. She was probably expecting a check, always greedy. One last payout the elderly guy would have to give her before she sent him to the curb. Maybe a beautiful round figure, $50,000 or $150,000. "I would like to ask for your forgiveness for the fact that I am such a burden," I said, a flicker of something in my eye. She ripped it open. The first document was a letter on the letterhead of Hoffman and Associates. She began to read. In 5 seconds, her expression shifted from smugness to confusion, then to pure horror. "How is that even possible?" She directed her gaze toward me. "Could you please explain what this is?" David snatched the papers from her, his hands beginning to tremble. "Father, what were you doing, Dad?" I indulged in a small taste of the wine, allowed it to breathe, allowed the moment to linger. "It was you who wanted me to leave the family. I am only doing what you asked me to do." Ethan and Lily stared blankly, unable to comprehend, but aware of the shift in the room's atmosphere, the change in the way the air felt. David was going through the pages at a rapid pace. This states that you are making the down payment for the house, making a claim on it again, rather than calling it in. Your down payment was supported by a trust that contains certain restrictions regarding the ties between family members and respect for the elderly. You have disregarded such provisions. The trust is pulling back its support. However, this residence actually belongs to us," Sarah exclaimed. In reality, I responded calmly, Section 3.2 on page for should be reviewed. The property is subject to a contingent interest that is held by the trust. If the beneficiary fails to abide by the provisions, which you are aware of, the trust has the authority to enforce its claim. "That is not a lawful action," she screeched. "It most certainly is," I corrected. Michael Green, who has been practicing estate law for 31 years, purposefully structured it in such a manner. The year was 2019 when you put your signature on the documents. "I did not read those." David stammered. "Were you the one who did that?" I asked. Sarah's hands were trembling now. "This is something that you are not allowed to do. You are attempting to extort money from us." "I am not attempting to achieve anything at all. I am the one who is doing it. Do not stop till you have finished reading." David found the next piece. His features fell into a frown. "The loan for a business. The $85,000 that I provided to you, which he referred to as a gift, but which I documented as a loan, I clarified. I took out my phone, opened the photos, and displayed a picture of the promissory note which he had signed. When the IRS froze your accounts last year, you failed to make a payment according to the provisions of the agreement. If a default occurs, the entire sum becomes payable immediately, along with interest at an annual percentage rate of 6%. David was doing the calculations in his head. As of right now, the total is more than $95,000. The precise amount is $100,000. Payment is required within 90 days. An official demand letter can be found within the mail. Sarah jumped to her feet with such force that her chair tipped backward. "You orchestrated this. You son of A.B. For half a year, you have been plotting this." Indeed, that is correct, I confirmed. Since when has it been the case? She screamed. In June. I overheard you talking on the phone with your sister about how everything will come to you once the old man was no longer there. Talking about the possibility that my stress could cause the process to move along more quickly. David quickly turned his head upward. How is that even possible? David, you need to inquire with your wife regarding the contents of the discussion, regarding the fact that she wanted me to be dead so that you might inherit sooner. I never have. Sarah started. It was you who did that, I stated calmly. 3 o'clock in the morning on the 14th of June, I was making repairs to the sink in your kitchen. You were talking to Laura while using the speakerphone function. I possess a copy of a recording. That last part wasn't true, but the look on Sarah's face told me I didn't need one. David faced her, stunned. Sarah, you have to tell me that he is not telling the truth. I wasn't in the way that you're implying. I was simply releasing my frustrations. It was not my intention to imply that you want for me to pass away without making any accusations, I said gently, allowing my son to process the full weight of her intentions. I merely stated the facts. That way, my kid would be able to get my money without having to deal with the annoyance of my being around. Every single person in the room fell utterly silent. Even the Christmas music had stopped. The only noises were Lily's quiet sobs and Sarah's labored breathing. There is other information, I told them. Do not stop till you have finished reading. David turned over the next document, the accounts that are for savings, each and every cent that I have donated to you throughout the years. Gifts totaling $130,000 have been given out since 2018. Everything has been documented, and there are written notes on everything pertaining to temporary help, bridge funds, or emergency aid. I have taken great effort to be precise in my choice of words. It is not my intention to request that those debts be paid back, but I am keeping records of them for the purpose of tax reporting and the possibility of an inquiry into fraud. Is there any sort of deception taking place? David's voice was barely audible. While you have been reporting your business income on your tax returns, you neglected to include my financial help as part of your income. That could very well be an act of fraud. The Internal Revenue Service may have a vested interest in this matter. Michael had made it clear this was a murky area, likely not leading to formal charges, but the threat was significant enough. And then I concluded, as the last thing on page 12, my revised estate planning documents are included. You and Sarah have been excluded as beneficiaries from my will, my trust funds, and my investment accounts. The Rachel Morrison Foundation for Cancer Research is the recipient of everything at this point in time. Rachel, my wife, our son David's mother, the lady who gave him more love than anyone could give anything in this world. Sarah had forbidden the mention of her name in their home because it made her uneasy. David's expression was one of having just been struck. You are excluding me. You have excluded me from the very beginning. I am simply ensuring that it is in compliance with the law. However, your mother and your mother's mother would have wanted you to uphold the honor of your family, to show respect for those who made sacrifices for you, and to prevent your wife from plotting to murder your father for the inheritance money. I was unaware of the information, David stammered, his voice cracking. You were aware that she was trying to distance herself from me. Even though I was unaware that she had made that statement, you were aware that she was sabotaging our relationship, but you still allowed her to do so. You have decided to make her comfort more important than my presence, which means that you will have to deal with the consequences of that decision. Sarah snatched the papers from David. This constitutes a violation of the law. Everything mentioned here, we will file a lawsuit. We will battle against this. Proceed with what you are planning to do, I said. The letterhead has the contact information for Green and Associates. Although I ought to give you a heads up that litigation is a costly endeavor. I know that Michael would be thrilled to hear from you. And considering that I am demanding that you repay the debt that you took out for your business and that you are on the verge of losing your home, I do not believe that you are in a position to purchase it." She blushed, her previously pale complexion now a furious red. "You are nothing but a vindictive old bastard." "More than likely," I agreed. "However, I am a spiteful old man who still has his home, his wealth, and his dignity. Are you able to make the same statement?" David was looking at the documents in a way that suggested he found them completely incomprehensible. "Please, Dad, this can be resolved. We can discuss this. I will speak with Sarah about this. We will figure this out together." "Would you mind figuring it out for us, David? The reality that your wife had me killed is a significant factor. The fact that you suddenly got up from your seat at the Christmas dinner table and told me that I was no longer a member of your family. Those are not issues that you will resolve. You have to learn to coexist with those things." I was incorrect. I apologize for this. I was completely incorrect. You were indeed. And in around 45 days, you will be even more regretful when you are required to leave the property. You have that amount of time. You can find the information in the announcement. "Where does it say that we should go?" he asked. "I am no longer concerned about that," I replied, standing up and fastening the buttons on my jacket. The same jacket Rachel had bought me for our 40th anniversary. Her last gift before the disease claimed her life. "I do not belong to your family. Do you recall? You left no room for doubt in that regard." I continued in a steady, professional voice. "The business accounts are on hold until the debt is repaid. As of tomorrow, the credit cards for which I am listed as a co-signer will be closed. The joint savings account that we established in order to pay Lily and Ethan's college education is still in its original condition. They are the ones for whom that is meant, not you. However, you are no longer able to access it until such time as they reach the age of 18. I have appointed myself as the only trustee. You are not allowed to treat your grandchildren in this manner." Sarah shrieked. "I am not doing anything that will affect my grandchildren in the future. I am shielding them from the poor financial decisions made by their parents. They will be able to access the funds whenever they require them, should you continue to be a part of their life by that time." Lily was sobbing with all her might now. Ethan's face clearly conveyed fear. I wanted to hug them, to tell them Grandpa adored them, and this wasn't their fault. But I couldn't. Not anymore. David grasped my arm. "Please, Dad, I beg you not to do this. I will make repairs to it. I will force Sarah to issue an apology. We will begin again from the very beginning. Please, just do not steal everything from me." I gazed at his hand on my arm. Then I looked up at his face. In that moment, I was reminded of the small boy, and then the teenager, every single incarnation of my son, each of whom I had loved, reared, and sacrificed for. And then I saw the man making the decision to prioritize his wife's nastiness above the affection of his own father. "You cannot have it both ways," I stated in a hushed voice. "You do not have the right to evict me and withhold my funds. It is not acceptable for you to refer to me as toxic and then plead for my assistance. This evening, you decided on something. Learn to coexist with it." "The person who made me was Sarah," he cried. "Sarah did not compel you to do anything," I said firmly. "You have reached the age of maturity. You are an adult male. You made the decision to allow her to push me away every single time that happened. It was your decision to make every time you failed to stand up for me. You made the decision to choose her comfort over my presence whenever that situation arose. It is not acceptable for you to blame her at this time." Sarah had started to cry now too, tears brought on by anger and frustration. "You are tearing our family apart. Your family brought up its own downfall. I am just declining to cover the cost of the damage any longer." I managed to get my arm out of David's grasp and then moved in the direction of the door. An explosion occurred in the room immediately after I passed by. Sarah yelling at David, David yelling something in return. Both Lily and Ethan crying out loudly, papers being swept off of the table, resulting in the sound of them scattering. I turned away and said, "Merry Christmas," and then goodbye. I made my way outside, immediately enveloped by the frigid December air. It was 43 degrees. The moisture from my breath condensed in front of my face. Other houses were illuminated with soft Christmas lights just a short distance down the street. I could discern the sounds of laughter coming from one and music emanating from another. Families that are typical and that take typical vacations. I entered my vehicle, a fully paid for 2019 Toyota Camry, and sat there for a little while. At this point, I could not stop my hands from trembling. The effects of the adrenaline were starting to fade. There was something different in its place. It was not regret, and it was not quite satisfaction either. I think I was experiencing grief for the bond that I believed I had with the boy whom I believed I had raised. My phone chimed. Notifications began to arrive by text in a steady stream. "I beg you not to do this, David." "Dad, I apologize." "David, we will be able to resolve this together." "David, this is something that you are going to come to regret." "Sarah, we do have rights. Our lawyer will get in touch with you, Sarah." I blocked both their numbers. Afterwards, I phoned Michael. "How was the event?" he asked. "Approximately what was anticipated. There's a lot of screaming, some pleading, and the typical threats regarding attorneys." "Do you believe that they will genuinely contest this?" "No, they are unable to afford to do so. They are also aware that everything has been documented." "James, I feel so bad about this. I am aware that this does not meet your expectations. It is just what I required. Even yet, it is not." I started the car. "I will be leaving for home. I wish you a Merry Christmas, Michael." "I wish you a Merry Christmas. Should they reach out to you personally, please give me a call." I drove back to Beverly Hills, to the home that Rachel and I had purchased almost 40 years ago. The residence in which we brought up David to become a young man. Places where we have participated in birthday celebrations, graduation ceremonies, and Christmas mornings. Rachel had passed away in our bed as I was holding her hand. There was no one in the home, and it was dark. This year, I was the one who put up the Christmas tree all by myself. After turning on the lights, I took a look at it along with the ornaments that Rachel and I had been collecting for decades now that we are married, and the picture on the mantel of the 3 of us taken at David's college graduation. We appeared to be joyful. We enjoyed a lot of joy in our lives. I took a seat in Rachel's favorite reading chair, which I had kept in precisely the same position that she had usually placed it in, and allowed myself to experience the emotions that were arising within me. Everything without exception. The feelings of rage, sadness, betrayal, and loss. I then poured myself 3 fingers worth of scotch, Macallan 18, which is Rachel's preferred drink, and raised a glass in celebration of the empty room. I looked at her photograph and remarked to her, "We did everything that we could, didn't we?" For the next 6 weeks, I went through a really difficult time. David placed his calls from a variety of different numbers, including friends' phones, business phones, and random numbers generated by the system. I remained silent. On 2 separate occasions, he made an appearance at my residence. I did not open the door. Letters were dispatched by him. I returned them in their original state. Sarah attempted to try a different method. She asked Lily and Ethan to get to work, making me some cards, made her use her phone to call and tell them that they were missing Grandpa. On a single occasion, I listened to those voicemail messages. I heard their small voices inquiring when I was going to come over and whether or not they had done something wrong. I was fully aware of the outcome, and as a result, I refrained from returning the phone call, despite the fact that it required all of my willpower to do so. I knew if I called, Sarah would be on the phone, would make any kind of promise, would declare that she would go to counseling, would claim that everything was just a mistake, and would say anything it took to continue to have access to my money. Then we would find ourselves right back in this situation again, 6 months later. It was Michael who dealt with all of the communication. Demand letters alleging undue influence and mistreatment of the elderly were written by the lawyer representing David, a man who had passed a bar exam 3 years prior. Our documentation was returned by Michael. The demands came to an end. During the 7th week, the bank took possession of their home due to foreclosure. Prior to Christmas, they had failed to make 3 mortgage payments. It is obvious that the request for the return of the down payment was the last straw. A neighbor informed me that they had relocated to a 2-bedroom apartment in Glendale. The sale of his Audi was a necessity for David. Sarah was employed in a retail position at a shopping center. Their enterprise went bankrupt. Clients began to leave when there was a lack of my financial support, a lack of good credit, and an inability to make timely payments to their suppliers. Their bankruptcy filing took place before the month of February had even begun. Michael was approached by the bankruptcy trustee in order to discuss the loan of $100,000. Every piece of documentation was supplied by Michael. The fact that it was a legal debt was confirmed by the trustee. It would be discharged in the event of a bankruptcy. However, during the following 7 years, David's credit was completely ruined. I did not experience any emotions as I was watching the event unfold. I was merely an observer from a distance, much like if you were to witness the collapse of a building that you had been aware of the flaws in for years. Unavoidable, expected to happen. The last letter that David sent to Michael was handwritten and was not opened by Michael before it was sent in the month of March. He sent it via mail to the address of my residence. "I am not expecting you to forgive me, Dad," it began, "and I don't even expect you to read this. But I have to say this. You were correct in every way. Sarah was the one who was turning me against you. She did indeed wish for you to be out of the way, and I allowed it to happen. In comparison to you being there, I prioritized her comfort. I decided that integrity was not as important as money. Rather than defending your position and advocating on your behalf, I decided to take the simple route and agree with her. I was feeling weak. I am not strong. We no longer are married. 3 weeks have passed since Sarah departed from me. She stated that she was unable to be in a relationship with a person who had lost everything. It seems as though I was only useful when I was able to access your financial resources. It should have been apparent to me. You were a witness to it. I did not do it. Lily and Ethan both make inquiries about you on a daily basis. They are aware, even if I inform them that Grandpa is occupied. Children are always aware of things. As for this issue, I am completely at a loss as to how to resolve it. I apologize, but I am not certain whether or not it is fixable. I offer my sincerest and most heartfelt apologies. I adore you with all my heart. I am well aware that I do not deserve to say that. Yet that is indeed the truth. David. I went over it 3 times, and then a 4th. This wasn't the resolution I'd ever wanted, not truly. My heart still ached for the son I'd lost, the family I'd thought I had. But the crushing weight of their manipulation, the casual cruelty, the insidious plot against me, that was gone. I had protected myself. I had honored Rachel's memory. And I had learned that sometimes the hardest choices are the ones you have to make to save yourself, even if it means watching your own family crumble.